Getting on to talk about artificial life. Are algorithms alive? In the sense that they can produce new life. Well, even the most complex of algorithms usually refer to some kind of overarching order, and I'll illustrate this with some carpets. Some of the most exquisite Persian carpets based on painting I think they rely on a kind of a gaseous point of view, as Lewis says, and they imply a kind of relationship between the infinite and the infinitesimal, because each point in this carpet is so rewarding and interesting to look at, but also the points all are oriented toward a whole, a centrally organized whole that kind of mirrors the universe. Ultimately, such carpets confirm a whole. And in kind of carpet that's very common in Turkey, of which this is a small detail, you also see both the independence of the part and a relationship to a whole. In this kind of carpet, you have layers within layers. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 layers in this carpet that kind of suggests that you're looking into deep space, looking into an order that's perhaps ever more abstract. And people writing about these carpets say that they mimic the structure of the universe. So these carpets, too, have algorithms that are obeying some kind of divine order. However, I think that Caucasian carpets woven in the Caucasus, suggest the open. The last chapter of my book is about Caucasian carpets, because I see this kind of independent life surging out of them. They have an oddness and particularity of their forms that suggest they could have evolved differently. And if you look at the forms in this, you will see some things that kind of look like animals. You see some couple of paired, pale-colored creatures that look kind of like deer without heads. You see that? You see some things that are sort of halfway between a flower and a crystal. Some things that are sort of disturbed. Really, frankly, the first time I saw one of these carpets in the flesh, I felt sick to my stomach, because I couldn't tell whether I was looking at animal, vegetable, mineral, or some like completely particular hybrid of all those things. So, although they still make me a little queasy, I love the Caucasian carpets because they suggest that life self-organizes and mutates and comes up with forms that cannot be predicted, and ultimately doesn't refer to some kind of overarching structure, as the two previous carpets I showed you did. In Embodied and Infinity, I compared Caucasian carpets to generative algorithms that respond to new information and therefore are able to come up with results that couldn't have been prefigured from the algorithm's initial state. But even the most strictly ordered hierarchical carpet produces singularities where ideas meet matter. This is a detail of that larger carpet I showed you at the beginning. And I love this carpet because, do you remember the large version of it? Okay. This is the center. This is that central medallion, the kind of divine symbol. And yet, I find this carpet so deeply wacky. I think that those strange flowers, that they really look, they look animal-like. And these cloud bands borrowed from Chinese art, they compete with the transcendental motif of the central medallion, as though these little forms have heard of heaven and they want nothing of it. And because many people find this quality in carpets, the way individual forms have such liberty and such quirky oddness, it begins to raise the question, is there something in material that resists idealism and has its own ideas of how to develop? And this is a question that could be answered by the concept of the machinic body, but I'm not sure I'm going to have time to talk about that. Embodied response. What do these kinds of patterns and carpets do to our bodies? On the one hand, thinking phenomenologically, they enlarge us. Looking at an aniconic work, a non-representational artwork, we tend to perceive patterns, and in fact we are hardwired to perceive patterns because pattern makes order out of a chaotic universe. Our brain is always looking for patterns in images that have low information content. If you've ever enjoyed watching TV for a minute or two and realized that you weren't actually watching a channel, that was your brain making order. Our brains are constituted to seek order and to create order out of chaos. Our brains protect us from meaninglessness. So, phenomenologically, it seems that patterns confirm the certainty of our embodied subjectivity, and that engaging with a carpet enlarges our capacity for perception. Phenomenology would say that the pattern of a carpet appeals to a shared embodiment, that we can relate to a line or a form. We can feel the way a line feels. And I don't think this is necessarily anthropomorphic. Thinking like a carpet, thinking like a carpet implies that abstract forms that sometimes cling to figuration and sometimes release from it can act as a medium for experiment in corporeal perception. Where figuration would seem to inspire identifying the thing we're looking at by comparing our body with the body we behold, whether it's Mary in the Annunciation or Mary Lee in Written on the Wind, ornament appeals to a different kind of embodied relationship. And we could call this relationship empathy in the terms of the turn of the 20th century theorists Wilhelm Loranger and Theodor List, or what List called an enjoyment of the self projected into a body or form. So this suggests that people can empathize with abstract forms insofar as those forms undergo experiences that we too might undergo. How am I doing for time, Samir? Okay, great. So I say that all carpets appeal to empathy, and this at increasing levels of abstraction. So first off, we have these extremely refined Persian courtly carpets that are based on paintings, and they have very little to do with their material nature. If you look at this, you want to identify with the narrative, this exciting hunt. But even in the finest of these carpets, you can see there's something kind of quirky. You can see those silk and wool fibers asserting themselves. But still, these kinds of carpets invite a molar more than a molecular response. Now, this is really interesting. A lot of carpets that were made by Muslim weavers for European Christian clients have this weird interaction between molecular and molar. hierarchy. And yet, a carpet like this complicates that message. You see those shields, right? Yeah. A carpet like this complicates the message of courtly prestige with its patterns, and also around the border with abstracted forms that used to be Arabic letters in earlier generations of this carpet. So there's a ghost, probably, of a blessing in Arabic in this heraldic. Carpets can invite us to identify with the riotous, reckoned life of plants. Now these vase carpets too, of which this is a really gorgeous example, these too invite an identification that is an identification with form. Here's a close-up of another vase carpet. I think looking at these, you really feel the life of flowers and pregnancy and generation. And I think we can identify with their ovarian second quality. And carpets can invite us to emphasize with the expressiveness of line and space themselves, as in another detail of my favorite carpet from the Ulu Jami and the Rigi Shiva. On the other hand, so on the one hand, I've been saying, using kind of phenomenological ideas, that carpets can sort of confirm us and who we are. And we can look at them, and in looking at them and feeling like those lines and spaces, we become larger, better people without losing our sense of ourselves. On the other hand, when pattern appeals to us at a molecular rather than molar level, it does not confirm what we already are. Rather, it undoes our body's usual ways of being. And this is especially so because pattern appeals to rhythm. Rhythm unmakes and remakes the body. And this is the argument of Deleuze in his book on Francis Bacon, and also the British theorist Kojo Eshin in his great book, More Brilliant Than the Sun. So recall Mary Lee dancing in Written on the Wind with such energy that she causes her father to fall to his death on the stairs. And I think the Caucasian carpets have something like that. So Deleuze argues in Francis Bacon, The Logic of Sensation, that representation speaks to cognition, confirming what we already know. But what he calls the figural addresses the nervous system directly. So the figural is an image that bypasses the mind to appeal directly to the nerves. And Deleuze holds out for the nervous system as the one site in our body that's not already colonized by cliches. Perception, he thinks, and I actually agree with in a lot of ways, is already informed by habit and social custom. And this is where Deleuze parts company with phenomenology. Sensation, however, attacking the nervous system directly, is the only way we can feel something that does not address us as already formed. And this is the radical argument that the figural makes us a new body. So I want to ask whether the non-figurative or not quite figurative patterns of Islamic carpets are capable of seizing our nervous system